Hi everyone, Agnes here, and I have got Alex back. Hello, Alex.
Hey there, coming to you from my Zoom island.
Fantastic. We all need a Zoom island. Good to see you again.
You too. I'm so excited. Last time was awesome. Let's do it again.
Yeah, let's do it again. Now, last time we talked about EMDR and all sorts of other things. I will put the link down below for those of you that missed conversation number 1 with Alex. Today, I'm going to ask him some different questions. But firstly, I'm going to just give a little bit about you. You are a psychotherapist. You have about 30 years plus experience, studied in the West and in the East, which is such a interesting two halves of a nut. And you really have done so much amazing things. The two things I want to talk about today is a bit more of EMDR and the yoga, because that's such a great way to get ourselves into a balanced and grounded state. So I'm going to throw a few things at you today. The first one, addictions, because many people suffer from all sorts of addictions, from substances to pornography, to gambling, to food, to name a few. And these are obviously sitting on the top of a lot of stuff that's going on underneath. So can you talk a little bit about how to recover from addictions and how these particular therapies that you do with people, whether it's in one-on-one or couples, have really helped people to recovery?
It's a big topic, right? It's a big one. This could be a series of, 10.
I know.
10. I'm going to try to summarize those as best as we can. So most recently, Gabor Mate has been really going around the world speaking about trauma and addiction. And he's doing an amazing job teaching people the root core of addiction. And I think, before him, there were other people that were poking at addiction, but I think he's doing a great job. So if anybody wants to follow up, I think they should take a look at Gabor Mate's work on addiction. So I'm going to plug him because I think he's doing great work. So
yeah,
from my perspective, and just kind of seeing it actually in my own family, and then working with people and my own understanding of addiction, I'd like to present that model and see how it lands on people, right? So what is when we say someone has an addiction, like what are we actually describing from an internal mechanical, perspective, right? What addiction is a very broad term, and I would like to speak about it from the initial phases to full blown, right? And there's a reason for that. When we look at the history of someone and we see when addictions form, we usually see some kind of trauma, some kind of psychological, emotional injuries that get linked with a particular addiction that works to make you feel better, right? So what happens early on is that the brain creates what we call a link or an association with, especially during childhood and adolescence. That's where most addictions begin. Can they begin later? Yeah, but the roots really are in childhood and adolescence. And that's where, let's give an example of some sort. So a child feels not seen or valued at home, and then they hang out with some friends, and those friends see and value them, and then they start drinking together. The being seen and being valued starts to get linked with the drinking, and the social piece starts get linking. And so what happens, and it's not an addiction, what we would call an addiction yet, but it's the beginning of the formation of saying, hey, bonding comes along with alcohol. Dealing with emotional issues comes along with alcohol. So we got a lot of binding happening there, right? And so what happens then? If the person doesn't unpack that, then later on as an adult, whenever there are social situations where the person maybe feels disconnected from, now doesn't bond well or has other issues around you know, relating, now the alcohol is going to pop out, right? Or they're not feeling well on an emotional level, the alcohol is going to pop out. So we look at that, that's the beginning. And then what happens is then if the person doesn't deal with those traumas or injuries, then what happens is now we get the momentum of the addiction, which now becomes physiological. This is the harder part. There's a transition from the psychological, emotional, then to the physiological. And it's when the physiological stuff that starts to happen, it really starts to bind it towards the full-on addiction, and much more difficult at this point to resolve.
Okay.
Makes sense so far? Right?
Yeah. Nice. Yep.
So the physiological is now going to be the dependence of the nervous system and the brain for the chemical just to feel relatively okay, let's put it that way, right? It's no longer to deal with the psychological traumas. Now it's like, you know, I'm drinking and I don't like the side effects of the drinking, and I'm going to drink more to deal with the side effects of not drinking. So why do we end up, you know, moving towards, you know, in recovery, right, or healing? It's very difficult to do while we are still engaging in the substances, because we have to help the person deal with the physiological cravings. And that's why does a person go away for, let's say, a month, right? What's the point of, why is this magic number like a month or 3 months? And a month is actually nothing. It's usually 3 months. 3 months is when we start to see the beginnings of the physiological release from the dependency. Around 90 days is the magic number of the beginning, right? If a person's been using for a very long time, it'll take much more time. But 90 days where the brain and the body starts saying, okay, we can start to explore rebalancing to a homeostatic stasis of what it used to be like, right? And then really is the beginning of dealing with all the psychological, emotional, spiritual issues.
Yeah.
All right. That's a quick little something.
Yeah. And that's where these therapies that we discussed in a little bit of detail last time, the EMDR, and especially because that seems to be one that has had really good success rate with what you have just described. And people make some really good progress. So would they start, say someone's been at rehab or in recovery from their addiction, they've stopped, and then of course all their stuff starts to come up, all their emotions and all of that. Would you start EMDR and all these other things after the 90 days, ideally, or before?
Listen, let's say a person is at let's do at home versus, like, let's say, a center. Let's say, let's just do a little bit of distinction there. If you're not at a center and you try to, you know, detox, it's you can do it. People do it all the time. It's difficult. It's uncomfortable, you know. Because you got all the physiological kind of things. You know, you often hear people like, you know, I'm gonna have to bear through, you know, the alcoholic detox, let's say, right? Or the porn, and, you know, stop the porn for 90 days and deal with all the physiological, you know, tensions that build up, right? You can do it at home, and it would be great to do it at home, but have a therapist, right? And maybe have a health coach. I think having a health coach which looks at, like, I have a friend who does complementary medicine, and I really believe that anybody going through any kind of, literally, any psychological issues, any and all, should go through some complementary medicine, because there's so many things that goes on with a person that's going to influence their addiction. For example, low vitamin D levels, testosterone issues, women have imbalances, thyroid issues. You know, all of these things actually can contribute to the addiction because they're not feeling well, right? So if you're at home, if it were up to me, I'd want to create a team around you, right?
Yeah.
So it would be a psychotherapist, it would be a comprehensive medicine person, probably some kind of somatic based healing like yoga, tai chi, breath work, some form of embodied practices that went along. So we would create a team. Many of the rehab centers now, not all of them, but many of them are starting to move into this model of having actually a comprehensive model. You know, like we have a few in Connecticut, up in Northwest Connecticut, where they do outdoor adventure, they do yoga, they do all these kind of embodied practices, and people love it and find a lot of healing. So you can do, so there's both ways. It's a matter of just what kind of support you need, you know, in dealing with that. You know, that's the thing. You know, so EMDR can be included in that, right? If you read The Body Keeps the Score, for example, by Van der Kolk, you see that he creates a model. He says, if you're going to do a trauma, EMDR, yoga, breath work, community.
Yeah.
This is important. You know, a lot of people just, the community, most of the people who I work with, if they're separated from a community and they're doing this by themselves, it's good, but all that, because they're most of the time they're dealing with emotional injuries. So you do it by yourself, but you're still not connected to others, right?
Yes.
So the huge part of the healing is being connected with others who maybe are going through that, who have been through it, things like that. That's that fourth support. So it's really important.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think that's why Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and all the other Anonymouses are great, because people are in there, you know, and you hear your story in lots of different ways through other people. So, yeah. Okay, that's great. That's that is really a lot of hope for people that are currently going through an addiction. I'm finding with the work that I do, I see a lot of love addiction, and also people that want to get love from the outside, and usually it's from a specific person. Now, sometimes it's a healthy person that has got good self-love, good self-worth, and they have got an object of their attention, no problem. The other side that I see is when people are in full-blown obsession. There is what they call limerence, the emotional obsession with another, and a fixation. So there's that line in the middle where it can tip one way or the other. So for people that have got, say, love addiction or experiencing limerence, would you deal with it or treat it in the same ways as what you've just described?
Okay, let's back up before treatment. Let's talk about the mechanics again. What's going on?
Okay.
Yeah. Like a doctor. I don't want to prescribe a treatment before we really understand, because the understanding will lead to the healing, right? So love addiction is a really big word, and I'd like to take a deep dive into that. And maybe that's where our time really goes. So if you bear with me to unpack that with you together a little bit. Let's look at a range. A child growing up in a home or an environment, let's say, where they're given the feedback that it's okay to be them, they feel more what we call whole, intact, right? Those people will not be in love addictions because they feel at home. Therefore, when they go out in the world, they invite others who are also at home. So everybody will invite their imago. Okay, the word imago means image. So we all attract the imago, which is basically the following. It's another person who we imagine will bring us out of our pain and suffering. And by having this relationship, we will return back to our wholeness, right? We'll get to that belief system and theory and striving that each one of us does this. We've all done it, including myself. So there is nobody outside of that mechanics in the human world. No one is outside of that. It's just a matter of degrees, right? So the person who feels much more intact, they're less likely to invite and want to be with partners that are not whole, right? And when we say whole, there are there's degrees of that sense of feeling okay with myself, right? And so as we get away from that, now let's start moving away from wholeness. And now we start moving to, I don't feel intact. I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard, all the way to the side of, I'm horrible. I don't deserve to exist. I'm a nobody. Like, let's just make up those words as the description of the flip side, right? So I am fully cracked. There's nothing whole about me. I'm splintered. Okay. So you can see the spectrum there. As we move from wholeness to fracturing, what ends up happening is we end up seeing and using other people as objects. This is a very important mechanic. Here, I'm going to see myself as whole, therefore I'm going to see you as an intact, whole individual. And I'm not going to need something from you to manipulate something from you, want something from you. You and I are going to share a space together, and in that shared space, create love and a vision, right? As we move away from that wholeness, due to traumas and all the other pieces, I then see you unconsciously that you're the object to my healing. You're the object to my healing, not an actual person per se, but I see you as all unconscious, by the way. I just want to say, it's not like we walk around and go, I'm seeing you as an object, but we treat the other person as an object because unconsciously, we actually do not want that person to get inside and see all the smelly stuff inside of us. All of the repressed material in all the ways that we don't feel good about ourselves. We keep that suppressed. Therefore, we find someone who is not going to touch that because they feel splintered and not whole. So then they're going to be busy dealing with their stuff, projecting on us. I'll be dealing with my stuff, projecting on you. So what do we both say? Hey, you don't go into my closet. I'm not going to go into your closet. And we're just going to stay splintered, use each other and dance with each other to support our neuroses. Right? Whereas the person who's more fundamentally whole, they don't have that stinky closet. Or it's small and they've worked through stuff, right? And then if we go all the way to the end, this person is so splintered that that material that's cut off in the psyche is buried really far away. And the severity of that is now the other person, the partner, is fully an object and I'm going to use them completely. And that other person also wants to be used that way too. Don't forget, there's a dance. So it's not just one way. You can't have it one way. It's like atoms. They're drawn to each other. And so they have to have an electric charge that matches with each other. Otherwise it doesn't work. So it's amazing, right? We could all walk into a room and be drawn to a particular person where the other person's like, oh gosh, I'm not drawn to that. What are you doing with that person? And the other person's like, oh my God, I'm so smitten with them. Like, and you're like, what is going on here? That's because their unconscious is saying, yes, that's exactly the kind of map that I'm looking for. So I don't deal with my stuff and I'm going to project on you all my stuff. So love addiction, if you want to put it that way, and it's really unkind and unfair to call it love. I want to say that. It's object addiction. To call it love would then, what are we doing to the actual word of what love actually means? It's kind of funny we say this is a love addiction. There's nothing about love that's going on. It's all about, I'm sorry to do this, transactional use of each other. And that has nothing to do with love. Yeah. And then we say, I love you. That's nonsense. Who do I love? Is it really you that I love? No, it's the idea of how this can function and I don't have to deal with my stuff. Yeah. So, I don't want to call it love.
Yeah, that's a really good, because in the 12 steps, they call it sex and love addiction. There's a group called Sex and Love Addiction. So it's very interesting how you just broke that down. I've never actually thought of it that way. So that's really interesting.
Or sex addiction. That's not it. It's not sex addiction. It's object addiction.
Yes. So how can I use that person?
I'm going to use you as the source of my gratification.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So if we're going to use the word sex and love, let's use them in the highest term, that it's a space of full-on sharing with each other our wholeness, like an inner light shining, and we go to share that. We share that in every way possible, as well as the sexual intimacy space that we go to share that. Versus if it's not a sharing space, it's a using space.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that's going to sit interestingly with people and tweak them, and I hope it does. So this way, nobody goes around saying I love you and without really examining that.
So the childhood is where all the problems are and where all the solutions are in terms of how we get to move forward.
Yes and no. Look, it's interesting. We all get stuck in having to go in, kind of review our childhoods, right? This is the classic Freudian kind of ideology that he began, right? Let's talk about why is that the case? It's simply the case because those are the most formative years in terms of the development of the human being. It's because the psychological, neurological framework is in its most malleable, influential time. That's why, right? It's kind of like things are being molded and formed and ingrained in that time. Why not so much later? Why is a person in their 30s and 40s not as moldable? It's because it's been going on for so long. Take a record player and play for 40 years. See how easy it is to move the needle out of the groove. It's very difficult to do. So in adolescence as well. But that I meet people where it's like, hey, life has been going okay, and then all of a sudden a relationship or a trauma occurs, and it shifts them in a way that they never imagined it shifting. Then here comes New York for you. The sirens. Can you hear them?
No, I can't.
You can.
I can't. I'm still stuck on the blowing palm tree. That's all I.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, childhood, and then, adolescence is where we get to experiment with some of that groundwork. And then the adulthood years, 20 to 30, we further experiment. And now we're experimenting beyond the original clan. We go out to the other clans and practice what we learned in our clan,
Yeah.
Our tribe, sort of say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So therapy, I want to be cautious here. Many people have this idea in therapy that it's about revisiting all of that over and over and over again. It's absolutely unnecessary. It's only necessary to start to understand how things were formed. And once you get that sense of it, why do you have to keep revisiting it? Now it's about letting go and transforming.
Yeah.
But a lot of people want to come to therapy just to kind of rehash their story, and they believe somehow that if I'm going to say it enough, it's going to transform. It never does.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. It's an actual coming back to the wholeness that was lost. Not that it was lost, but that loss of contact with that. So that's why we do the embodied work. The embodied work bypasses the mind and emotions and comes to a deeply felt sense of being at home. And that's much more healing than any retelling or revisiting our stories.
So when you talk about the embodied work, can you go through, because you're bypassing the mind, you said, is that where the yoga comes in and all these other types?
Yeah. It's the yoga, It's the
Yeah.
embodied breathing, embodied meditation practices, right? It's a revisiting of the energetic subtle body that is the ground of our being that doesn't change. Now, I want to share a story so people get an idea of what this is about. So I'm visiting my folks in New York, and I went to the local grocery store, and I ran into my childhood best friend. It was amazing. I love him so much. You know, we were so close, and we're standing there and we're looking at each other, and I realized that the same beingness that saw him then was witnessing him now. It was such a profound moment, because I went home and I asked myself, so what has changed over 40 years? And what was interesting in my exploration of that is what the spiritual path has been describing for thousands of years, which is the following. Our fundamental beingness, knowingness, quality, spacious, infinite, divine self, never changes. That will never change. That same knowingness was then, and it is now unchanged. So I asked myself, what changed? What changed was my experimenting with what I learned Alex is on a conditional level. You know, born to this family, with this culture, with this background, and so forth, and seeing that in the experimentation of that as an adult, where it was working and not working, and seeing how that worked, and did it make me feel whole? And so then eventually you start to resolve the relative Alex on a relative plane to return back to that knowingness quality that's my original nature. So what met my friend now was the Alex that has resolved a lot of that stuff and is not entangled in some kind of, let's say, confusion or neurosis, which is close to the wholeness. So therefore we have the ultimate nature of who we are and the relative expression in union together. When those are in union together, you feel whole. And that's what I realized was going on. And so our journey for all of us is to clear away all of the baggage that has been learned so we can realign to our true nature. That's the whole journey. And
Which
that's what
is
that
love.
Moment, and it felt like love. And my experience with him was just love.
Yeah.
Just pure love. I didn't need to know what he's done for the 40 years. It doesn't in a way matter, because it's the same expression of his true nature was coming through.
Have you seen him at all in that 40 years, or this was the first time?
One time before, but not for so long. This time, and then we spent a day or two together, just reconnect, and it was just as though nothing has happened in 40 years.
Wonderful.
Profound. And in truth, if we really look at this, nothing has happened really. What has happened? All of these experiences happened. What's the point of all of those experiences for 40 years? They're impermanent. Can they really bring me back to my true nature and wholeness? And the answer is not necessarily. So in those 40 years, it wasn't the experiences. It was only if I understood those experiences and worked with them to see if they assist me in the return back to my wholeness. Otherwise, it's just another experience. I'm not whole, another experience. And here comes addiction. I'm seeking another experience and I don't feel whole. I seek another experience, I don't feel whole. Now it starts to ramp up. I seek more experiences, and we get lost in that. I'm going to use classic Rupert Spira comment. We're going to try to find more people, more experiences, and more things, believing that one of those somehow is going to return me back to my fundamental nature. And It never has worked. There's never been an object that can do that, not a person that can do that, or a fleeting experience.
Yes. Yes. And I think the more you chase the next bright, shiny object, whatever it is on any given day, and you have a certain amount of years behind you, you see, well, okay, that was really great to get that. But then the dissatisfaction kicks in, and then it's like, what's next?
Right there,
So it's
right
like
there.
there's
It's right there.
never an
ending.
unquenchable thirst, an unquenchable thirst.
All right, let's dive into that.
Okay.
All right. That unquenchable thirst. You know, when you're eating ice cream, I don't know if you ever noticed this or something else, but I'm going to use ice cream as an analogy for now, right? So I let's say I have this, I want ice cream. As I'm eating the ice cream, what happens to the want?
It goes.
It goes. It's amazing. So I want everybody just to pay attention. In the moment of the experience, the wanting goes. So is it the ice cream that's causing us to make that go away? What's making the wanting go away?
Good question. Good question. Well, you feel in that moment a satisfaction. The dissatisfaction of not having it goes away. The satisfaction of having it kicks in.
Of having this, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's fleeting, right?
Even though it's fleeting.
It's fleeting, right? And
yes.
we know it's going to fleeting. So we're trying then to put our hopes into fleeting experiences, and we become addicted to not the object, but the moments of not craving. I want to really point this out back to the whole addiction thing. What we're actually seeking in addiction is to end addiction. I'll say it again. What we're seeking in addiction is to stop craving.
Yes.
That's the fundamental drive of all addictions, is that I don't actually crave anymore.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the absurdity is I'm trying to resolve craving through more craving, right? And so then an interesting exploration starts to happen and say, wait a second, that's not working. So then how do I resolve craving? Wow. Now is when we really begin the depths of our spiritual journey, right there. Until that question begins, we're lost.
Yeah.
It's
really
all
good
in the
news.
craving.
It's all in the craving. And I'm glad you've brought this up, because in the law of attraction, law of assumption, well-being circles, it's about so much focus is put on using your mind to create something. And then you create the next thing, and then the next thing. And it's this drive from this dissatisfaction and this unquenchable thirst that you were just talking about, that eventually you will get to the point where you hit the wall with that. And you hit the wall.
You do. You hit the wall. And here comes a really important transitional phase that is very difficult, and people avoid. This is where the addictive aspect, we avoid this next piece of it. It goes like this. So let's say I say to myself, I would like to stop, investing millions of dollars into Ben and Jerry's every week. Right? I love Ben and Jerry's, so I'm not, I want to eat them all the time. Maybe this is my own projection of Ben and Jerry's that I maybe have done myself.
Now I'm feeling my craving kick in, Alex.
I got to go see in my refrigerator how many Ben and Jerry's I may have there now. So we say, okay, that's it. I'm going to stop, eating Ben and Jerry's. What's the first thing that we encounter is the physiological intensity of not having the Ben and Jerry's. Or we could say, let's say ice cream, right? Or the experience. we're like, oh no, I can't resolve the craving. And so the first piece that we have to work with is that intensity in the body of the momentum of the craving, because craving has a momentum in it. When we don't go for the object to resolve the craving, the physiological intensity and the craving itself feels very large. Very large. It's like, it feels like it's all consuming to the inner consciousness. It's like it just colors the whole sky with its intensity. And it's like, whoa, wow, that's really intense. I need to go resolve this now. I want this to go away, right? Now, what I teach people when I'm working with them is that intensity is only going to last 1 to 3 minutes at most. That's all you actually have to get through. And they're like, what? If you use the right mindfulness and breathing tools, the intensity will go from 90 to 100% down to about 10, 20, 30% left over. That's it. And when people start to do this, they're shocked. They're like, oh, that wasn't too bad. The initial wave is not so bad. 1 to 3 minutes. Now, obviously, if you have some addictions that have been going for 20 years, whatever it is, right? And it's really, the body is dependent, it'll last longer, but I'm not talking about that level yet, right? Once we get past that initial wave, then we can start to really sit with and be with the actual experience of craving and start to dissect it. So you sit there and you start to dissect it. It takes some investigation. You keep observing it and you're working with it on the body. You see how it's arising, and you keep saying, "What am I really seeking?" And this is the question that I like the person to really start to ask. What am I really seeking? And invariably, it's always the same thing: peace. I want inner peace. And I say, okay. Let's move towards that. And then begins the exploration of the unconscious that still has not been dealt with, that's creating not peace. So what are we saying? We're saying, I'd like calm waters, but my waters are turbulent because I've never dealt with it, right? And then the next phase is, we got to go deal with what creates the turbulence in the water, because you want peace. See, we went from addiction, and see how we're working our way back. Right? And now we want peace. Well, in order to have peace, we have to go resolve that which stirs the waters. So you see now, so it's not, the craving is now over here. Addiction, craving, right? Stirring of the waters, going down. We're walking down to, oh, wow. My nervous system has never really learned to relax from childhood. Great. Okay, we can do that. Wow, I'm really holding a deeply felt belief about myself that I'm inadequate. Okay, let's deal with that, right? So now what you get to is what I call the structures of addiction. So if you have a building, addiction really, I mean, people would be interested to see how people react to this. Addiction is the roof. It's not the foundation. In the foundation are the core beliefs that were formed in childhood. That's the foundation.
And what's in between, would you say? Between the foundation and the roof?
All of the ways that the foundation shapes the house.
Nice visual. I like that. It is really about peace, isn't it, Alex? It really is. All the stuff on all the branches of the tree, it all comes back to peace. Yeah.
Inner peace. Yeah. So when I use wholeness and peace, for me, they're synonymous. You know what I mean? An inner, a deep inner stable peace that one knows how to return to on their within their own capacity,
Yes.
not
Yes.
relying on people,
Yeah.
things, and experiences.
Yes.
Here,
Yes.
right now, like right now, here, with the muggy weather in New York, and it's humid and so forth, with all of the noise and everything, and peace now, not when the weather changes and the sirens stop ringing and we're talking and it's interfering. No. In the midst of the storm.
Yeah.
That kind of peace.
So the yoga, the meditation, the breath work.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Look, I'll be very honest with you. If you said to me, we meet 100 people and they've found their way to inner peace, I don't really care which way they went. So I'm not stuck on some formulaic way, right? I have met people from all sorts of walks of life, religions, ethnic backgrounds, spiritual practices, and they're also as equally interested in peace.
Yes.
So if we say yoga for one, for another one, it may be gardening.
Yes.
As long as the criteria is that it's not only peace during the gardening. We want to make sure that the point of the method, whichever method it is, sustains peace. Because we could all find moments in our lives where we go, okay, this gives me peace, but then that becomes an addictive place, and then we say the rest of life is not peace. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
So I invite everybody to find their own way to sustain inner peace.
Yeah.
So then,
Yeah.
enjoy, because the reason is this, because for each one of us, it may be different, and we'll only stick to that which really feels and makes sense to us as individuals.
That's right.
Not everybody wants to do breath work or yoga. Not everybody wants to do those things. You know what I mean? Other people want to do otherwise. They want to chant and sing. They want to dance, and they want to go rock climbing. I don't really care. Just I want to know what that person is, that when I meet them in their work, that they can relate to me. Hey, I found I'm stabilizing inner peace. Awesome.
Yes.
Because the more people we have in the world that know how to do that, the better world we have. The more we know how to do that, the less we're going to use people as objects for sex and love addiction, which we're never going to use again as sex and love addiction, those words, right? We're not going to call it that anymore.
And then you're the greatest.
Object.
Yeah, and then you become the greatest gift to your family, to your friends, to your lover. Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
I always, I say a lot of this in my workshops and in my individual and my students. I say, try not to be a burden to other people in your neurosis.
Yeah.
Because in your confusion, you create a mess with others. So, try to leave others out of the chaos as best as you can. Because, it's not easy to do that. I get that. But it's a good thing to keep in mind that if I'm feeling not whole and not at peace and I'm interacting with people, like, what am I bringing to that?
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. It's better that you get in the garden, go rock climbing, do your yoga, do these things by yourself, and then come back with your new found peace. Yes. Yeah. Wonderful. Lovely. I think this is really insightful in regards to where to go for things. It's not out there. It's in here, and it's looking at where you're at, where you don't feel peace, and what can you do to get back there.
Yeah, it's an honest appraisal, an honest look at why am I not at peace? And to begin by saying, I'm going to remove the blame and projections that somebody else is causing that to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you again. Thank you again. And I'm sure we'll do it again.
We will. That was just such a, well, you know, let's say the side salad to the main dish.
We're getting to the main dish. We're getting there. I don't know what it is, but we're getting there, I think.
I think so. Alex, thank you so much. For anybody that would like more information about Alex, I'm going to put all the links down below for him and the link to our first interview so you can explore and listen and see, when you listen to this, where are you at in regards to...
And I'm open to all the questions. I will respond to all of them. Okay?
Okay, cool. Lovely. That's wonderful. Right. Well, do you want to say goodbye to everyone? And then we will say goodbye in private after I log off.
Bye from Zoom Island. See you next time.
Zoom Island. Bye, everyone. I'll see you, as always, in the next YouTube.